Muy buenos días a todos.
Okay, good morning to all of you and welcome to this international symposium organized by MSC on Octopus Sustainable Fisheries. Buenos días. Buen día para nuestros amigos de Portugal. Soy Alberto Martín. I am Alberto Martín, the person in charge of fisheries at MSC for Spain and Portugal. To all our guests here today, thank you very much for being here with us on this important day for us. And to all of you who are connected online, we know that there are a lot of people, around 150 people, following this meeting online. Thank you very much to all of you for being here today. A couple of announcements for those of you who are taking part online. If you would like to ask questions through the chat, you just have to write your name where it says, it reads login or register, and then you can ask the questions. So you log in and you ask the questions. Para quien hable inglés, hay interpretación al inglés. Solo necesitan hacer clic en la banderita británica que hay en el ángulo superior derecho, entonces tendrán, o en el izquierdo, y tendrán entonces interpretación al inglés. You have some information about the panelists and also a video of the Asturias octopus fisheries, which was the first one to become a certification, and you can watch the video. And without further delay.
Good morning, Camille. It's a pleasure to have you here today with us. Thank you for accompanying us today. Camille is our Program Development Director for MSC. Camille has been working for MSC since a long time ago, I think 2005, half a life. Between 2013 and 2019, Camille was the Regional Director for Europe, and since then he was promoted to the new position, and Camille is one of the key persons to organize and to establish the strategic view of the organization on how to evolve and how to work. And he's going to give a welcome word and will explain us this strategy of the species for the organization. Welcome, Camille. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Alberto, and hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. It's a new thing for me, doing a big presentation virtually from a distance. I'm located in Finland, but I'm very delighted to be able to do this at Consemar. I have prepared a couple of slides, so let me share those first, and then let's hope they come actually through. So bear with me while I do that. I think they are shared now, but if someone can confirm that that's indeed the case, then I can start the presentation.
Yeah.
Did they come through, Alberto?
Yes, it is working.
Great. Okay. Let me start off then quickly by maybe zooming out to why the MSC is here. And if I go to the first slide, the MSC was created in the mid-90s as an initiative that tried to turn the tide for fish stocks, which were being overfished at the time, and sadly, many of them still are. And the MSC's vision at the time, and still is, that we want to see the world's oceans teeming with life, and that seafood supplies are safeguarded for this and future generations. And for that, we operate a global standards and certification system. The MSC is a global non-profit organization that sets standards for sustainable fisheries, for traceability in the supply chain, and it also operates an eco-labeling scheme that enables credible communication to the consumer about sustainable origin of fisheries and products that have met those standards. And by offering this global solution, we really help to contribute to make overfishing history. The MSC standard secures good stock health, ensures that fisheries are legal and that compliance are good with management systems. And in doing so, they contribute to world food security in a world where we head to a growing population. Today, some 16% of the world wild catch is covered by the MSC program. And that 16% is produced by many thousands of companies, big and small, that can use the MSC tool to demonstrate to their authorities, to the media, to civil society that they actually contribute to meeting the Sustainable Development Goals, where Sustainable Development Goal number 14 specifically caters for life below water. It wants to end overfishing. It wants to see restoration of stocks levels where MSY can be produced. There is no illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing and no harmful subsidies. That's what the MSC system confirms in that case for those companies and actually governments if they want to demonstrate progress against SDG 14. This slide confirms that as well, but from a slightly different angle. And the MSC system confirming no overfishing, no IUU, no destructive fishing practices, and good fisheries management is in itself something that is captured in a broader system. The MSC fulfills the benchmarking requirements from the Global Sustainable Seafood Initiative. Actually, it's the only global scheme for wild capture seafood, and it meets many of the complementary criteria in that benchmarking scheme. The MSC is the only global wild capture certification scheme that meets all the codes of good practice from ICEAL for standard setting, for stakeholder engagement, and for good governance. And I'm saying this with a specific attention to the assurance system of the MSC being recognized as the most robust. Not only the MSC sets the highest standard for fishery sustainability, but the actual assurance mechanism to verify if these standards are met is second to none. It's transparent, it's fully public, stakeholders can engage in an assessment process at any time. Objections procedures and the third-party accredited auditors that evaluate fisheries against the standard are of an exceptionally high level and trained for that work. So that is really setting the MSC apart from any other type of assurance mechanism that may be used nowadays in the market. Summarizing that, we operate a mechanism for recognizing and rewarding sustainable fisheries while incentivizing improvements. So this scheme shows it in a very simple format. A fishery at a voluntary basis can contact an auditor to verify if that fishery meets the standard. And then in a public setting, the auditor with its team of experts goes to work, consults stakeholders, management authorities, control bodies to verify if the fishery meets the standard. If it's met, the products can be sold into the MSC chain of custody. Every step in the supply chain needs to demonstrate it keeps MSC and non-MSC products separate. And then at the end of the supply chain, if a product is in its final format, then those that want to use the label can use the label subject to strict controls and rules as well. Then the consumer can be assured that the product originated from that well-managed and sustainable fishery. Now that's sort of the overarching introduction to the MSC. I'd quickly like to go over to Octopus and why Octopus is important. The MSC operates with what we call an integrated strategic plan globally. And every 3 to 5 years, we review and set new objectives in our strategic plan. Currently, we have a plan that runs until March of next year. And in this plan, we identified, amongst other, that we wanted to focus more on specific species group, because we believe that those species groups can essentially contribute to environmental conservation and also ensure that the MSC market-based mechanism keeps functioning. Specifically for octopus, we identified that octopus fisheries were underrepresented in the MSC program. And we feel and observe that octopus provides an enormously important ecosystem function and a socioeconomic function for local communities. So we've said in our strategic plan, we want to focus more on octopus. And as a result of that, we started to see more systematic engagement of the MSC system with the octopus fisheries. So far, that's delivered 2 fisheries to engage. And the world's first was the Western Asturias octopus fishery in northern Spain, relatively close to where you are now. This is a fantastic story of a small-scale fishery demonstrating progress to ultimately meet the MSC standard and also obtaining market benefits, is my understanding, with products being uptaken in, if I'm not mistaken, Switzerland and the US. And that was followed by a fishery, the second octopus fishery to enter the MSC system in Western Australia. Also a small-scale trap-based fishery where products are now available in the Australian market. And both these fisheries are sort of trendsetters. They use the standard to model their management to some degree where necessary, but also to demonstrate their high level of sustainability operations and to document their environmental high performance. Going to a bit further on the species strategies as part of our current overarching strategic plan, we have, apart from octopus, a strategy for squid, for crab, And we have a number of strategies for tuna, small pelagic, whitefish, and salmon. But the focus on the first three is really more to than growth. The MSC had very little presence, as I mentioned, in octopus, and the same was the case for squid and crab. We see growing presence in the MSC system of each of those species groups. And we had very substantial presence of tuna, small pelagics, whitefish, and salmon. And the MSC there is really focused on making sure these fisheries meet the standards. So they close their conditions, specifically for tuna, very important that harvest strategy and harvest control rule conditions are met in time to secure the future of tuna stocks. And growth is then a nice to have, but maybe less of a focus. So it's more about the actual performance of the fisheries being maintained and improved to maintain MSC certification. Typical activities of our species strategies that we map the global catch of a species group. Then we try to understand markets. We try to connect fisheries and market actors. We try to build understanding of the MSC standard and support fisheries with a whole suite of tools to find them on a journey, what we call a pathway, to meet the MSC standard at some stage. We have an in-transition program, the ITM program, that really gives a very systemic improvement framework for fisheries that they can then document, and they would be listed on the MSC website and have access to funding. We identified issues for specific species that may need to be addressed in the fishery standard. So small pelagic fisheries, for instance, are very important for the ecosystems, and we have a specific key low trophic level set of requirements for those. But many small-scale fisheries need to have essentially a risk-based framework to be assessed with. So also that risk-based framework was to some degree progressed and developed on the basis of what we observed in the species strategies was necessary for being able to engage with those species groups. Last but not least, we developed communications materials to support strategy objectives to be met. On my last note, before handing over back to Alberto, I want to really make you all aware of the Ocean Stewardship Fund. As I said, fisheries that are credibly transitioning to meeting the MSC standards that are part of the ITM program, they have access to this Ocean Stewardship Fund. We have a specific component of that called the Transition Assistance Fund, and that supports improvements that are identified in the improvement action plans. And fisheries that want to benefit from this, they are now able to apply. The application process is open until, I believe, early December. For more information, please look on the website. On that note, thank you so much, and handing back over to you, Alberto.
Thank you very much, Camille, for your really interesting presentation. And we invite you to keep connected in case some people from the public would have any questions. But thank you very much. Seguimos a continuación. Bueno, estoy encantado de presentar ahora a mi compañero Carlos Montero.
Carlos Montero, who is a sea biologist and has 2 masters in environmental management and sea management. He is in charge of the fisheries program, and he has a focus on the pre-certification initiatives. And he's going to tell us about what MSC does regarding these issues. So welcome, Carlos, you have the floor. Good morning to all of you. It's a pleasure to be here today. As Alberto said, what we'd like to share with you today is all of the tools and the workspaces at MSC which have been less feasible so far. We are recognized for our systems and certification processes and the use of a label in the final products coming from our sustainability management system, certified as sustainable through our standards and also traceable. Traceability is very important, but there is a whole previous work that is developed throughout the years, carried out by teams led by Alberto and people like the ones who are here today, that are not that visible. And for many years, we have started standardizing these methodologies and generating tools and mechanisms. Camille has told us about some of them, and we're going to tell you a little bit more in detail about them. And on top of that, that in particular regarding octopus, they are very important. So you have seen there are two fisheries in the world that have been certified for a number of reasons. There are bioecological reasons regarding the species of octopus themselves, and also commercial reasons. But the reality is that the way that we have to approach at MSE these fisheries involves a number of challenges, additional challenges. And these pre-certification tools, or so-called pre-certification tools, have to be useful, or a useful tool for this. So what I'm going to introduce you to is the pathway concept, a pathway towards sustainability. This is the previous work we do before fisheries are certified. The novelty here is that we are standardizing this. This pathway concept is standardizing the different stages of the process, since we get to know the fisheries and we map them up to the pre-evaluation steps, and then a pre-certification plan, an improvement process. All of this is what we call the pathway concept, that more often than not is implemented by means of the pathway project. This is a summary slide. It's not updated, maybe, but it shows all the projects that we have at MSC all over the world. Some of them have a more geographical focus. We're going to work with fisheries from a specific region, or some others are focused on a specific species, such as octopus, which is a species that is being approached through a specific global strategy at MSC. We work with a lot of species, as you can see, all over the world. So within the framework of this pathway projects, we're working with octopus fisheries in a number of places, as you have just seen. One of them is very important, which is only 4 octopus fisheries that is being finalized, and we are conducting this project in the south of the Indian Ocean, the southeast of the Indian Ocean, including all the countries in that area. And then we have a number of projects in which we are working with octopus fisheries here in Spain, in Italy, in Greece, in a number of countries, as you can see. So this is what we call pathway projects, which is a seal of MSC, but we know that there are other projects that are using MSC tools that are not MSC projects, but there are projects that are using pre-assessment tools or other tools that we have developed. So we think that this is a part of our contribution to this space of improvement, this margin of improvement. We are cooperating with another projects all over the world. Here you can see a list of projects in which we are participating to a more proactive extent and on a more regular basis. We have more artisanal fisheries and more industrial fisheries. As I am saying, octopus is one of the main species we want to work with. And also, well, you know that we are working with it. Fisheries standard for pre-assessment. So all of this allows us to have a global vision, and in these slides we can see the challenges, strengths, and weaknesses regarding the fisheries standards of a number of fisheries. Not all of them. This is just a summary that I've just included. Octopus fisheries that have dealt with the MSC standard system. Sooner or later, as you can see, the 2 ones on top are the only ones that have been certified, but there are many others that have used MSC tools to diagnose their environmental performance. All of this is a part of this previous work that we conduct with fisheries before the certification. And as I'm saying, this is the regular work that we do. This has been systematized in the last few years. We generate systems, mechanisms, and just we try to tell the story and try and understand the impact and incentive that these may involve. And finally, as Camille has already said, all of this has been packed, just to put it like that, that into a new program that we started developing in 2016, at least it's a pilot program. It's called the ITM program, in transition to MSC. That's what ITM stands for. So this program tries to establish a number of criteria, steps, processes to try and verify the robustness, the credibility of the projects taking place before certification, with an aim to providing from MSC something that we are very good at, to ensure the process, to give a guarantee about the process. So this is why we operate a standard with a number of requirements, protocols and standards that all the parties have to follow, from the auditors to the clients, including the stakeholders. And this model that we use for fisheries certification is started to be applied for projects that want to become closer to that certification. This responds to the concept of projects of fishery improvement, which is a reality already. So we would like to make our contribution at MSC to improve that new tool that is in the market. So, as you can see, it's a repetition of that pathway concept that I have already shown. Pre-assessment, action plans, but an auditing process, with an auditing process just to verify that these steps are being taken. The different feature or different contribution that we bring to the market through the ITM process is the verification process, and as Camille said, this is accompanied by a funding mechanism, this TAF fund, which is a transition assistance fund, transition towards MSC. So we have our own funds, and we are reverting part of these income or these funds to invest them in a number of projects that have a degree of verification in terms of progress or progress in making progresses towards becoming certified. Of course, these are not certified fisheries. They are in transition, so they are not fisheries with products that are recognized in the market. They're not using labels, but there is an incentive in terms of understanding that these are going to generate a guarantee in the market, brands, companies, distributors, etc. So that's it. Basically, I'm going to stop here. This is based on the concept of a credible project. This is a definition that MSC developed many years ago regarding a credible improvement fisheries project based on a number of very simple criteria, and this has been developed together with a process verification system. And that's it. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Carlos, for this vision regarding the previous work by MSC. Sometimes it's not visible. It's important to tell about it due to the involvement of MSC, not only MSC, in the work not only of MSC, but also other stakeholders. There are only 2 certified octopus fisheries in the world, and this is due to a number of challenges that these fisheries are facing. Some of them are related to science, and this is why we have here today with us Ruben Roa. It's a pleasure to have him here today. He's a doctor in statistics by the University of Ottawa in New Zealand, and he has worked in studies regarding fishing stocks and marine biology for more than 30 years, a long time. He works with biostatistical monitorization for the FAO, for the Asturias government, for Spanish, Portuguese and Chilean universities. He's written and published more than 60 scientific papers, and he's been involved in working groups in Latin America, Spain, Europe, and all over the world to work on the management of fisheries. So please, Ruben, welcome, and you have the floor. Good morning to all of you. If we can please see the presentation. You know the certification standards of MSC already. I'm going to talk about the first principle and the third principle only, because this is the area I've been working on. So let's talk about principle number 2. There are only 2 octopus fisheries certified, and one of the main reasons is that it is very difficult to assess stocks of octopus to satisfy the requirement, fulfill the requirements of information established by principle number 1. And this is because octopus are very special in terms of their life history. They're not like fish who live for a long period and that have what we call a population inertia, a lot of population inertia. And we can get to know the abundance of the stocks because we look at the cohorts of fish in previous years. So there is a lot of memory in fish stocks. But it's not the same with octopus or squid or other animals who have a short life, such as anchovies, sardines, some crabs. So this is a complex problem. But this is indispensable because if we want to reach the level of information of principle number 1, it is indispensable to have an assessment of the stocks, that is, a scientific study of the abundance of the fish in the sea, or in this case, octopus in the sea. This is unavoidable, this is inescapable. We have to have an idea of the status of the stock. The process involves to have data, developing a mathematical model, and then generate biological points of reference, which are like the anchors that we have in terms of knowing the biology of the stock, just to be able to know whether we are exploiting it in a sustainable way. Then we have the management decisions after the mathematical model and the points of reference. We have the management decisions that ideally have to be made in line with the reproduction capacity of the stock. Here we can see the system that these 2 fisheries have, or their countries, the 2 fisheries with a certification for octopus, Asturias and Australia. In the case of Australia, they have a system which is a preliminary system, because the Australian system has not developed a mathematical model of the demographical dynamics of the octopus in order to know their reproduction capacity. So as you can see on this slide, they have very detailed data regarding a number of issues related to this fishery. Then there are a number of biological points generated due to the fact that the fisheries is controlled since its origin, so they know the situation of the stock before it started being exploited, so they can conclude their reproductive capacity. And then they have a statistical model that generates a rule of decision, and this is fixed. It's not been updated. This doesn't change since they don't know the dynamics of population of the octopus that is being exploited. The Asturias model is more advanced. It has very detailed data regarding weekly catches and weekly fishing effort. They develop a model of catch dynamics by the fishermen And then we have a model of the population dynamics of the octopus, and then we calculate a biological point of reference, which is the average latent productivity, and then we generate the harvest control rule, which is updated every year, not like in other cases. In this case, it changes. It's updated every year. I am in continuous contact with the fisheries of Australia, and the scientist in charge told me that they are looking at how to develop a more complete model like the one in Asturias. Maybe they can adopt the same model or a different one, but with a similar level of complexity. So here we can see the harvest rule in Australia. The goal includes a specific catch by trap. So this is an important fishing rate, but it doesn't tell us much about the size of the stock. But this is the harvest rule that they have and the harvest control that they have, and it's been enough for the first certification. And probably if they want to renew it, they will have to develop a more complex and more complete model. This is the model that we are applying at the moment in Asturias, in the west of Asturias. What you can see in the first image is the raw data. This is how we call them. Before any analysis, it is a little bit chaotic, but it includes a lot of years of data. The first graph is the weekly catches, the second one is the fishing effort, also on a weekly basis, and the last one is the mean weight of the octopus on a weekly basis. So these are all the data that we need, weekly activity, and the average weight of the octopus. I would like to dwell on this a little bit more, just to say that basically, after developing this mathematical model for the renovation of the certification of the Asturias fisheries, I have reached the conclusion that there is already enough data to conduct a stock assessment and to get to know the dynamics of the population of octopus in general, in Spain and other countries. I have published 2 scientific papers with assessment of the status of the octopus in Chile and in Asturias, and I have reached the conclusion that there are enough data. We don't need more data. The administrators have to organize or get this data from the Fishermen Association. And another important conclusion regarding this is that these data are not expensive. You don't need a lab. You don't need to analyze the physiology of the octopus. It's not necessary to get on a boat and conduct direct assessments from boats that cost a lot, $10,000, $15,000 per day. It's enough to analyze with analyzing the data that we have from the fishermen. The mathematical model exists, so we just need to implement this. So what do the administrators have to do? To gather this data and give them to the scientists. The system that we have in Asturias, we have the data, we generate a model, a first model, mathematical model of the activity of fishermen, and then on that basis we generate results that the biomass and the natural mortality and the fishing mortality. On that we have another mathematical model of the population dynamics of octopus, and that enables us to generate the average latent activity, and we have a statistical error margin around that point of reference. And Asturias has decided to, on a as a precaution, to calculate the average latent productivity, and then to include some statistical error in these calculations, to find a way to include this statistical error. There are some common features to the 2 fisheries, the one in Australia and the one in Asturias. The most important one is that there is a close cooperation between administrators and fishermen, which leads to us scientists having access to the activity of fishermen and to the data generated in a very detailed way, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. And this is vital. Without these data, at the end of the day, the degree of complexity and detail of fishing operations in the stock assessment of octopus replaces the very expensive data that are obtained in other stocks in terms of analyzing the age of the fish, for example, or having scientific boats going to the fisheries. From the statistical point of view, the daily activity of fishermen generates enough freedom to prepare very complex models, and this is good in comparison with the much more expensive systems that are implemented in large-scale fisheries. Here we can see that in the case of Australia, the advantage was that the fishery was controlled from the beginning by the administrators. This means that this generated from the beginning a connection between administrators and fishermen. As a matter of fact, they worked together. First boats who were fishing in Australia were authorized by the administrators of that state in Australia, and as a matter of fact, they gave the boats and the fishermen were on board. So these generated good results in Australia. A problem with that approach is the generation of scientific knowledge. It's based on empirical results only. If there are changes in the system, scientists are not going to be able to detect it, and this is going to have repercussions on fisheries. In the case of Asturias, we don't have that problem. We have a great generation of knowledge, and this has been published, and scientists have celebrated these results, have welcomed these results. There are other problems, though. In the case of Asturias, it is difficult to apply from the mathematical point of view. You have to write a number of codes, and you have to make a number of calculations. This is a disadvantage, but the complexity overcomes that disadvantages. Regarding the management, which is principle number 3 that we saw in the beginning, I would like to highlight 3 fundamental facts. First, a shared commitment to sustainable fishing, co-management facilitated, because this generates data for scientists to make our calculations, and then all the interventions are agreed upon by fishermen, or they participate in the generation of these interventions. And thirdly, the database of fishermen, of daily operations, which is the one we use to feed the mathematical models. In the case of Asturias, we have to say also that nature suffered a bit because nature helps a little bit also because the area is very suitable and very good for octopus. So octopus is protected to a degree in this environment. The last also rough weather protects the stock from fishing. Another issue I'd like to comment upon is that in the case of fisheries, the usual criteria are not adequate, and the ones that are based on the maximum sustainable yield, because they generate an excess of exploitation. So we have to dig a little bit more. In other cases, such as Mauritanian octopus and Mexican octopus, there are other biological points of reference that are more conservative and that tell us about the population dynamics of octopus, and which is called the average latent productivity. We've published on this also. Another important aspect is the system of data gathering, data collection. It has to be very detailed, and the best guarantee to do this is to work hand in hand with the fishermen. There is a case that I'm not going to mention, but I also took part in some studies for the Madagascar octopus. An NGO developed a system for data collection that enabled the approval of that system. Conclusions. If there are no stock assessment studies, the first principle is not going to be passed. Second conclusion, 2 administrations and their experts have developed management and scientific tools to assess octopus stocks and to get the MSC certifications. The Asturias one is better, as I have already said. In both cases, co-management has been crucial. The fourth conclusion is that the data collection framework from the fishery by management must store data at the most disaggregated level possible. And the fifth conclusion is that biological reference points derived from the maximum sustainable yield are generally not reliable for octopus stocks due to intrinsic population fluctuations. In the papers that have been published by us and other people, we can use them as a reference in order to do more research on what I have been mentioning on this presentation, during this presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ruben. There are some questions on the chat. So Alberto Grazo, who is the person in charge of companies in Spain and Portugal, or relationships with companies in Spain and Portugal, is going to tell us about these questions. We have three questions. The first one is whether the mathematical model is available, is published. Yes, it is in the list of readings that I gave you at the end of the presentation. All of it is published, and the software that I created is open source and free. Okay, we'll send that to all the last slide includes that information, and that leads you to other information, other data. For example, the repository, international repository. You can contact me also, and I can give you the software you need. On the other hand, they're asking whether the model takes into account the effects of bycatches in fisheries management. No, this fishery has no bycatch because traps are very specific. So maybe they're talking about other fisheries with maybe trawling nets catching octopus. So we don't need to take that into account. It can be taken into account with our models, but you would need to develop a two-fleet model that exists also, and there is software available for that also. So it can be implemented by taking into account bycatch by another fleet. Okay, the last question is whether the study of the model could integrate the discards of octopus or returning the octopus to the sea. Yes, this is included in the model, and it's just subtracted from the catches. So it's all of it is registered or tracked. So that's not a problem as long as there is a register, as long as there are records. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Okay, thank you very much. We have just had the part where Camille, Carlos and Ruben were going to make some brief presentations. Now we're going to have a debate. I'm going to ask you to please bring a couple of chairs to the stage. Maybe we can remove the podium here. Since it's going to take a couple of minutes, I'm going to take advantage of the opportunity to introduce you to our guest speakers. Firstly, I would like to introduce you to Carmen González Vallés. If you can join us here at the panel, Carmen. She is works at the Sustainable Fisheries Partnership with the market. She coordinates the roundtables for squid and octopus at SFP. She's been working for SFP for the last 5 years, and she has been trained in ocean sciences, and she got a master's in the management of the sea environment at the University of Vigo. She worked as an observer and a coordinator of fisheries programs, and also with the TUNIT Fisheries Regional Organization, and also other institutions. So it's a pleasure to have you with us here today. I'm sure the debate is going to be very fruitful and interesting. Thank you very much and welcome. Now I would like to welcome Mr. Francisco González. Francisco is the head of fisheries in Asturias. He is a skipper at the Marine School of Pasajes. He has a degree in environmental sciences. He was a boat inspector, and also he worked in fishing boats in Namibia and the Falklands. After some years on boat, he has started working in training at the Sea and Nautical School in Asturias, in particular in Gijón, the city of Gijón. It's a pleasure to have you with us here today. We've been working together for a long time now, and it's always a pleasure to meet you and to work with you. Thirdly, I'd like to call Mauricio to the stage, Mauricio Orellana. It's been a real odyssey to manage to have Mauricio with us here today. He comes from Mexico. The trip was very complex, but he finally managed to arrive this morning, and probably he didn't sleep much, but he's here today with us, so we thank him for that. He has a master's in agriculture by the University of Stirling, and he's been working in the development of business in the agricultural and fisheries sector, and since 2014 he's been the president of the Committee of Fisheries Improvement of the Yucatan octopus fisheries, and I'm sure he's going to tell us very interesting things, Mauricio, on the Yucatan and Mexico fisheries, and also the improvement fisheries project. And I would like to also welcome Gracieta Machado. Gracieta Machado has a degree in zootechnics. She has a degree, a master's in food security. She is the head of the department. Since 2018, she's been the head of the quality department of Brasmar in Portugal. Brasmar is a European leading company in commercialization of seafood products, in particular octopus. And she's been working for more than 15 years in production areas, quality, food security, food safety and environment. And she started working in the meat industry and then the bread industry, and now she's working in the fisheries industry. So, Graciete, it's a pleasure to have you here today with us. Thank you very much for being here. And let me just tell you that in this panel there are representatives of NGOs who are working with octopus fisheries, representatives of the authorities that play a very important role in terms of the improvement of this octopus fisheries, representatives of companies, Graciete, who have a very important role to play, and also representatives of fishermen, such as Mauricio is with us here today. So without further delay, let me just get started with this debate. Carmen, could you tell us a bit about what is the work of SFP in the world with the octopus fisheries, and also could you tell us about the issues, the difficulties, the pitfalls that you find, that you encounter in your work? Well, first of all, let me just thank you for inviting me for being here today. For those of us who don't know us, SFP is an environmentalist NGO. We don't work towards the civil societies. You're not going to see our logo very often, but we do work with companies that are in the supply chain. And in this regard, in our strategy, we give priority to a number of sectors. One of them is octopus. The demand of octopus at the international level, as we have heard already, has increased. So in the markets where we work, where we have an influence, there is a demand. Then octopus fisheries are basically artisanal, small-scale fisheries. So we tackle the challenges of these octopus, these fisheries, which is an important thing to do for us. Within the framework of these these sectors. What we organize is supply chain roundtables, and these roundtables are some, such as the Global Octopus Roundtable, with companies that import and buy octopus and others that distribute octopus in Europe and the US. I see some familiar faces of companies such as Di Estefa, Margalicia from Casal, Angula Zainagas, and also US companies that are not here today at Conchemar. But it's important to say that we are a working group, a forum to identify fisheries that need to be improved and to promote improvement projects that can lead to an MSC certification or to better practice in fisheries. This is the goal, to improve the world picture. We talk about octopus. We have small octopus, big octopus, a number of different geographical areas. We focus basically on fisheries. We start with common octopus, Octopus vulgaris, fisheries in the northeast of Africa, northwest of Africa and Mexico, since the markets where these companies actually started asking for our help these are the main interests of these institutions, and nowadays we have increased the scope of the group, and we are working with blue octopus, Octopus cianera, in the Philippines and Indonesia. This enables us to cover 60% of the volume, approximately. In terms of the challenges, pitfalls in management and implementation of improvements, well, I think that Ruben has given us a number of hints. Basically, we need to take into account that octopus is not like tuna, where traditionally there's been a lot of authorities, management institutions, and stakeholders, and except for Morocco and Mauritania, which have more tradition, there are fishing institutes that assess these stocks and that have management measures. We normally have fisheries that have little data, and this makes it difficult to conduct a proper management. So the pitfall, the challenge is to improve that. Also in terms of artisanal fisheries, octopus fisheries are fisheries that are developed basically in small-scale fisheries with a lot of boats and a lot of dispersion, dissemination. So it's difficult to go back to that part in terms of managing data, in terms of doing that. So we need to resort to strategies such as co-management, which is very important, and we need to consider also the implications, socio-economic implications of these fisheries. There is a huge volume in terms of fishermen with a lot of dissemination, scattered around, we can say, and communities that are very dependent on fisheries. And these are the main challenges that we're facing when it comes to implementing improvement. So our goal is to implement these type of measures, FIPs, fishery improvement projects, with stakeholders who are involved and that help us to connect and contact the providers, and so that we can improve these improvements, so that we can promote these improvements. Okay, thank you very much, Carmen. You have brought to the table very interesting issues. I'd like to go back to ask you about, well, you have talked about problems regarding the lack of science data. You have talked about the dissemination of boats. I would like you to tell us a little bit about the problems that you face regarding cooperation with regional authorities, and also as an NGO, when do you feel frustrated in terms of things not making progress? But I would like to also give the opportunity to the representatives of the administration to tell us a little bit about Francisco, about how have you experienced the process in the last 5 years? How, because you have had to work and manage all of this and successes. What's the role? What's been the role of all of the administration, of the authorities in this process? Good afternoon to all of you. It's very nice to hear you talk so well about Asturias in this very important fishery, the octopus fishery in Western Asturias. The management of octopus started in 2000, in the year 2000, with the initiative of our Center for Fisheries Science. And we have to be very proud of them because they are conducting a very important work. And, well, I'm speechless when it comes to describing the work that they do. In 2000, these exploitation plans were created, and these were the starting point for, in 2016, the anxiety of fishermen, because this was started by fishermen, became a reality, or turned into a reality. I mean, this anxiety was replaced by a reality. So all this work had a fruit. It was a fruitful work, and in 2016, after pre-evaluation of MSC, this fishery was certified. It was the first in the world. Now there are two in the world. So this accreditation showed a number, or this certification showed a number of strengths, but a number of weaknesses also. Maybe the main strength is the one that has been mentioned by Ruben, the one about knowing what is the volume of catches that could be extracted so that the resource can be sustainable. This certification generated also a synergy between scientists, fishermen, and the authorities that became involved from the beginning in the process. To make progresses in terms of knowledge. Now we have mathematical models that were developed together with Ruben, and we have advanced towards a more sustainable management model. But this was the main pitfall, and apart from all the difficulties that an authority might have for the management in terms of managing any fisheries, I'm talking about contracts, I'm talking about, well, anything that we try to do from the authority in this sense is complex. Well, Francisco is very humble, I have to say, and some things that we have seen they were doing, such as mobilizing funds to promote new science, and also fisheries laws to find solutions for the improvement conditions. We have always talked very well about Asturias fisheries, both in public and in private, and we're very proud and very happy to see everything that you are doing, Francisco.
Un panel como este, por supuesto, no podría faltar la presencia de los representantes de la flota. Por eso tenemos aquí a Mauricio.
Here today with us is Mauricio, representative of the fleet also. We have focused on the fisheries of Asturias and Australia. Both of them are certified, but as Carlos said in his presentation, there are many other fisheries that are involved in an improvement process that we've been working a lot. So Mauricio, could you tell us a little bit about why did you start a fisheries improvement project in Yucatan? How are you experiencing these? What are the challenges for you going forward, and what are the main goals of this fishery improvement project? Thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me to be here today. The added value of traveling and these times also is interesting. I was invited in 2014, 2015 by a Brazilian company with a very relevant US market and their provider in Yucatan, the peninsula of Yucatan, Mexico, to be a part of the start of the assessment of the pulpo fishery in Yucatan. Then we formed a group and we started working on this FIP thing. In 2018, we got more people, but we were still stuck in the FIP part of the process. Today, we have decided to give some more strength and robustness to what we are organizing with the view to in attracting more people and having a greater impact on the fishery, especially on the people who make it possible. The octopus fishery in Mexico, the one in Yucatan in particular, is the one who is sustaining the fishery sector of this area in the peninsula of Yucatan. So around these fishery produces around 22,000 tons per year, depending on the number of circumstances, as you know. Limited circumstances, as you know, in this industry, but this is a value that has been generated, added value that is generating lots of. This is generating lots of added value for families who live from fisheries in the area. So this creates jobs, and it's one of the main job creators in the peninsula of Yucatan. This is why, since I started my company 10 years ago, almost, I decided to focus on sustainability as an added value. But the FIP has some limitations from my very particular point of view, very personal point of view. So we made the decision to focus on the next step, to find a certification that gave robustness to the fishery compared to the FIP. So we started a dialogue with MSC, the MSC, and we started a partnership to see what we can do going forward and to have a greater acceptance and have an added value regarding the market to offer those who produce octopus. So what we are doing at the moment is to try and get the eco label by MSC to have it as a proof of the values being added by the octopus fisheries in Yucatan. The challenges that we see going forward are many. We have the tangible part of challenges. It's what we get from the assessments regarding the bait that is being used, the part of the inspection and surveillance of the fishery. This is a very important issue. And there's another one. And the intangible part is the value that is going to be generated with a view to giving more robustness to these and to attract more partners. And then we have a second challenge around the FIP. In spite of the fact that nowadays we have some people who are supporting us, and we have been a part of the roundtable of the FIP of Mexico. We have 2 or 3 important players who are producers, but they're not representing the critical mass involved in fisheries, in that fishery. So what we are trying to get is to generate value for the product to have more acceptance, more market, a greater market, and to become one of the few certified fisheries in Mexico and in the world. As for octopus, so we see this as a great value for Mexico. Thank you very much, Mauricio, for this intervention. You say that more players are needed in the FIP to give it more strength, more commercial players, companies. So this is something that is in connection with what Gracieta is going to tell us about. Today we have extraordinary translators, so you can speak in Portuguese and Spanish or in Portugal, whatever you like, no problem. So, Graciete, I would like to know, from the point of view of a company, what are the priorities at the sustainability level that Brasma is handling, and what is the place of the improvement of fisheries and octopus fisheries regarding this project as well? Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting Brasma to be here today at Conchema and to talk about an issue that is very important for us. What happens regarding the issue of the MSC at the global level? We feel that the market is increasing greatly, not only for octopus, but in general, the number of species that are being that the market is asking for is greater and greater every day. And there is no exception for octopus. So we are having clients that are asking for products, MSC product, on a global level. So this is why we are here today as a stakeholder, because we are very interested in guaranteeing a united chain. We want to be partners in trying to shorten the distances between the fisheries and the chain. So we think that this is a pressing priority, and we are here just to try and give some impetus to this process and to make sure that we are making progress in this regard. Thank you, Graciete. Now I am going to try and focus on some interesting issues that we are bringing to the table. Mauricio was talking about the need to attract more commercial players. You, Graciete, are saying that you are open as a company to cooperate. I would like to go back to ask to Carmen to ask her, what challenge do you consider one of the main pillars that you work on? How to link the companies to the fisheries? What are the pitfalls and challenges that you look at? And in particular, how can we connect companies to the fishery to improve the sustainability of this fishery in Mexico or any other country? Well, I invite you to join our platform. The launching of the FIP in Yucatan was made thanks to the company that Mauricio mentioned, which is Neptuno. So we started this FIP because Neptuno thought it was necessary to become involved in an improvement initiative. Now they have taken that step and they've decided to become involved and take a step further in terms of the certification. But the FIP was already designed with a view to tackling the MSC certification. The program has been tackling an MSC assessment test has been conducted, so the process has been started. So the different links of the chain have a role to play. We have the challenges of big retailers with more and more demanding buying policies, but in other cases this is different. So I think that they are playing a very important role. The companies who can act as a middleman, because on the one hand they have to respond to the demands of the big retailers, the large retailers, particularly companies that are exporting to the US, where there's a growing octopus demand. So they don't really understand that there is not a MSC certified raw product, so it's going to be difficult that in the short term we have more certified fishes. So what these companies do, they help us, some of the ones I have mentioned, by connecting us to the origin. Who has to become involved in this project? The players that Mauricio has mentioned, apart from the middlemen, are the companies that are at the origin of the process. Because they are the ones who have a greater political power in the countries, and they can actually connect. And this is what's happening in Mauritania at the moment. In this project that Carlos has mentioned already, there is how to put it, two parallel things that are being done, the scientific one, and then the Mauritanian companies themselves have decided to get together to mobilize these changes at the national level. So I think that this is, to an extent, the way that companies can become involved in. You have a role to play, but it's very important that companies that are in the middle of the chain, importing, exporting, selling, redistributing, become connected to the origins and become involved in this with these initiatives. Often we think that improvement projects and certifications improve fisheries, and this is what they have been designed for. But I would like to dig a little bit deeper and ask you, Francisco, about a vision. How did you think the MSC certification in fisheries has improved the life of fishermen? We have talked about this before, but I would like you to tell me how this certification has actually improved the life of the authorities also, because I think that there is something that needs to be highlighted in that regard also. Well, let's start with the workers. I think that the working methods have been improved, in particular in these fisheries, and this involves also a smaller impact regarding the resource. If we used to use a number of X baskets. Now they use less baskets, so the fisherman is happy about this because they work less and they have more profitability, more yield, and this is very important. Another very important part of the process is to reduce the uncertainty in terms of first sale prices. The certification added certainty to these prices. The fisherman knows what the price is going to be once they catch the octopus, and this doesn't happen in many fisheries. So I think that this is something that we need to highlight. In terms of the improvement for the authorities, as I have already said, it has generated synergies that we didn't have earlier, sort of cooperation and partnership between a number of entities, such as the University of Oviedo, the science institutes. With Dr. José Luis Acuñas, Ruben said. So there's a number of synergies and huge involvement of the sector, which is very important. So it has improved the quality in terms of working conditions, and I always connect this to the problem of the generational replacement. If we improve the quality of fisheries activities, it is moreover our obligation as authorities to improve the quality of work in working conditions in fisheries. And all of the aspects connected to the generational replacement to make the fisheries sector attractive, again, is one of the most important objectives that we have set for ourselves as administrators. One of the things that we have seen as throughout the years is that there's been an evolution in terms of the mentality of the fishermen in a way such that they are now the first ones who are against any type of unsustainable practices, more baskets than needed. They are the ones suggesting new ideas for management. So this is the change of mentality, this change of mindset is very important also. So this change of mentality of fishermen, we've seen that in other places it is necessary. There are challenges. I'm sure you have challenges in Yucatan. So we'd like to tell you, I would like you to tell us a little bit about these challenges, but maybe dig a little bit deeper to connect these challenges with the commitment that you as a fishery can have, and also the help that you might need from companies such as Brasma or any other, or NGOs such as FSP or SFP or the MSC. So can you try and bring all of this together? Challenges with the commitment that you can bring to the table and the help that you might need to make progress. I can summarize this. The third issue regarding the pre-assessment, the pre-evaluation, is the part regarding the stock. This is a healthy stock. This is a stock that stays healthy with the two species that are fished in Mexico. The stock, in spite of the years and the fishery and the catches throughout this time, it stays constant over the years. And it's a wonderful fisheries. It's a small boat that moves with the tide or the wind in a way such that the octopus tries to find a bait that is the one that is used for fishing. I'm going to share a video with you sometime because it's worth watching. As you have just said, it's about bringing together fishermen, and as we can see here today in this fair, the most direct chain where we can actually add value and we can break all the myths, bust of the myths that we have in front of us. If what I'm seeing here today in Vigo today, we try to bring us closer to the fishermen, trying to shorten the distance between the primary producer and the final marketer. We're going to be adding value to the fishery, first of all, and also for the people who make this fishery possible. In the same way, this is going to help us, all of us involved in this process, to call the attention of the authorities so that the challenges that we have in front of us in terms of production, follow-up and the surveillance of our sector, so that all of this help us to have better results and a better development of fisheries. From my point of view, fisheries in general is a business where it's not about fishing more and producing more, it's about selling better. And I think that fisheries, in particular Mexican octopus, can be a special example in this regard. If we try to get long-term results, this is going to be beneficial for many families, from the consumer to the fisherman, and the other way around. Graciete. We have talked about the involvement of the companies. So how can companies get involved with the fisheries? I am sure that there are difficulties also for you connected to a fishery. So how do you think Brasma can actually contribute for these fisheries to improve their sustainability? The role of companies is to inform the chain of the needs of octopus. We have information regarding the market, we have data regarding the market, regarding chains that need product. They are demanding product. So as Mauricio said, to bring the fisheries together, closer to the consumers, it's very important for everybody, because the consumers have to understand that the MSC product is better, is sustainable, and they can eat octopus for years. And there's a lack of information of the consumers regarding these, because consumers do not know the octopus production channel well. So more and more every day, in a very across-the-board way, consumers want information regarding how a product has been fished and processed and marketed. So these are the last link of the chain. Our work is a little bit more complicated because we have to inform. But if the chain is actually organized in a more compact way, and this information can actually move throughout and flow throughout the chain, that things would be better. So we need to be more informed, just to attach value to these information to a greater extent. So this is something that can you hear me? Okay, that challenge that Graciete has just brought to the table about being more organized, about making information flow better from the fisheries throughout the chain. I think that fisheries have a lot to say regarding this, but also those of us who work together with fisheries such as the MSC, also the SFP. I think that there are some questions on the chat, so maybe Alberto Garazo can just tell us about these questions. We have 3 specific questions. One of them is very specific. Let me try and read it verbatim. In the Caribbean, in Yucatan and Campeche, there is an important octopus fishery focused on Octopus vulgaris and Octopus maya. We know that these are 2 different species, Octopus insularis and Octopus americanus. How does this affect the management of the resource? Is the multi-species nature of this fisheries taken into account? Okay, this question, which is a very specific question, I think that Ruben, who is still with us in the audience, I don't know if you've heard the question, Ruben, but maybe you could join us here at the panel and answer this question if you want. Did you get the question? Yes?
Where's the camera? Yes, of those 2 species in Mexico, the catch of Maya is the most important one. Of the other 2 species, only the Americanus is relevant. That's important, and the fact of 2 species existing in the second stock of octopus is not relevant, because it's mainly Americanus, the one caught as the second species in Yucatan. Perfect. Okay, Ruben. Alberto, could you continue with the questions? The second one And I think it is addressed to anybody in the room. It doesn't have to be any of us who know about this, but they ask if there is any specific initiative of fishing girls to get MSC in Galicia. Well, that's a very good question. I'm going to answer. Galicia is one of the main powers producing octopus, and I know there is a lot of interest in the evolution and improvement of its sustainability in order to guarantee jobs in the future and to minimize the environmental impacts. We are talking to the Junta and different fishing guilds. We try all these pre-certification processes are private and they are progressing. So when it's possible, we will inform further. There is a lot of interest, and we are convinced that the administration and the official guides want to commit to the sustainability. So we will see how it evolves. Thank you. And the final question in the chat is for Francisco, and they would like you to explain the system, because this price system that fishermen are having, because the first sales price of octopus in Asturias is set before the auction. I mean, the fixed price. Is there a fixed price since the MSC certification was gotten or not? There are previous agreements made by the Union of Fishermen Guilds, and it permitted the union of them, because before they were competing with each other, and now there is a unique organization. That's why they get better prices, they negotiate with chains, etc. Do we have any other question in the chat? Maybe among the audience, somebody here would like to ask any question, or if not, because we don't have a lot of time, we're going to finish. I would like to say something else concerning what Francisco just said. We've seen that in Asturias there is a clear example when fishermen guilds come together and things are done right, people live better. Fishermen have to be fewer hours on the sea, and there is a scientific report from the University of Cantabria that talks about a price difference for commercialized products. But we don't think this is the main part. The most important part is that people live better, they commercialize better, and the product is warranted throughout the time. So this is a message that I think needs the support of everybody, the support of the companies like Brasbar or others that are involved. It also needs the leadership of fisheries, like the case of Mauricio, and the help of people who are supporting sustainability. We also need the support of NGOs, because this may help to solve problems and get financial aid when necessary. We need the presence of NGOs like the one Carmen is representing, and the decisive support of the administration. Without the administration that is able to mobilize the science and funds, the sustainability levels would not be achieved. So I just wanted to say that we need to work together. Thank you very much for all of you who are here today. You don't see it online, but we have all the seats occupied. And thank you very much for being online with us. This event will be also available online. And thank you very much. And an applause to all our speakers. Thank you very much.